very not, unfortunately, she fell sick. She had malaria last minute and was unable to join us. So we wish her all the best with her health.
Sarah, we can start now.
Great. Good morning to all. Good morning, Africa. Good morning, our distinguished guests. Good morning, our designers. Good morning, academics, and good morning to everyone in the fashion textile industry. We thank you all for joining us today in our very first episode of the African The Minds Textile webinar, which is titled by Textiles, a Crucial Facet for the African Culture. We welcome you all and we thank you for taking your time in participating. I'm just going to give a few house rules before we begin and hand over to Mrs. Sheila and Mrs. Grasa Michelle. So as this is mainly a discussion, we will have our panelists discuss, then go forth to having a discussion with each and every single attendee. Please feel free to lift up your hand if you wish to ask your question live, and also feel free to utilize the Q&A session. For all those who wish to hear in French, well, that is the non-English speaking community, please do press on the interpretation link in the bottom of your page, and you shall be granted French interpretation simultaneously. With regards to the recording, it shall be given to everyone on the website. So all those who cannot watch on the web, on Zoom, they can watch on the website and on YouTube. With that, I will hand over to Mrs. Michelle to give us the welcoming before handing over to our moderator. Thank you all. I hope we all have a great session.
It gives me a great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you who are joining Minds in this morning, which we believe it's really one of the milestones in the work we are trying to do as an institution which is claiming to affirm African identity. I want to welcome our founder, Dr. Nkosana Moyo, to welcome some of our board members. I believe they are joining us, and advisors. And I want to thank you, Sheila, for having led this whole process of preparation of this webinar, which I will call webinar or a debate or a dialogue, as you wish, because for me, it is just a privileged space in which we can just pour the intensity of this desire of affirming ourselves as Africans. Being the textile, one of the aspects which we can very visibly, not only emotionally, but visibly, we can see ourselves and recognize how rich, how diverse, how glorious and glamorous we are as Africans. Minds is a space in which we deliberately claim the aspects which you can say they define Africanness, aspects which it's just us as African. It builds our distinctive identity and personality. It is a space in which we can see ourselves as unique and contributing to the world, contributing to global culture, but willing deliberately to be recognized as distinctively Africans. So one of the areas we chose to bring to debate, but to bring to knowledge, to broaden the knowledge of ourselves, to share even where and how and what can be part of this distinctiveness of our Africanness. Textiles showed that it is a very specific aspect of who we are. And we chose then to open this series of debates, knowing that we are just going to touch on some aspects, but we'll continue to dig up and to expand our knowledge as we move on. So I want to thank the speakers for having accepted to bring the knowledge and expertise. I want to thank again Sheila for moderating our session, and I will be sitting very quietly at the corner, listening, observing, because for me it is, with no doubt, it's a learning process. And with this really very short welcome, I hand over to you, Sheila, now to guide us in our discussions this morning. And once again, thanking each and every one of you for having accepted to join and also to share of your own personal experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. And thank you certainly to Minds for the opportunity to be a part of something about which I'm very passionate. Let me just start by saying that in life, we do things because we have to put bread on the table. And then we sometimes, if we are lucky, do things because we are fortunate enough to do the things we enjoy, but also the things that help us put bread on the table. I wasn't so lucky. I spent time in the mining industry. It's pretty dusty, and there's very little textile to see. But that's because I needed to make bread on the table. If somebody had asked me and given me the resources to do what I want, it would have been the arts. And at the epicenter of the arts would have been the creative arts, as in textiles. But it wasn't always like that. I wasn't always so clear that textiles was what I wanted. It was in my early years when I spent time in Ghana, and there my eyes were opened as I traveled throughout West Africa, Central Africa, and the Sahel. I was struck by the wealth of our textile history. But more than that, I was struck by my ignorance of it, and I begrudged the world that I had grown up to reach my mid-20s before I knew something so basic about Africa. And since then, I never stopped searching for the truth about Africa's art in my personal capacity. And so when I think of what we are doing today, I think we are saving the generation, the ignorance I suffered. But more than that, we are empowering them, because I went around the world thanking the world for the things they ought to be thanking me for, because I didn't know that the world were really just showcasing Africa. Only the world, as history says, as the word says, history belongs to those who write it. History was written for us, and therefore it was written from the author's perspective. What Minds is seeking to do is to reverse that. And for me, as somebody who's passionate about the arts, what better thing to do than to start with the arts? What better things to do than to start with textiles? Whether you are looking at the rags from Ethiopia, the rags from Mali, the rags from Mauritania, or for that matter, the back cloth from Central Africa, or the beads from Zululand and Ndebelelands, you know, whether or not you are looking at, for that matter, the suede from the sand of Southern Africa, or muslin cloth from Ethiopia. This continent is awash with textile history, textile talent. And so with those few words, I welcome everyone. I look forward to learning. I should have been in this session 40 years ago, but Minds wasn't there to put it together, and now Minds has. And I hope that the next generation will be saved if you wish, the disadvantage of my generation. But let me just say this, that I don't love textiles and the arts for the sake of it. The truth of the matter is this is a big industry. It's as big as it gets. While our government focus on tourism, while our governments focus on mines, while our governments focus on oil and gas, they do so at the expense of an industry in which we have a history and expertise and a distinct advantage. And so I think it's not just important for us that we do this to empower ourselves from a knowledge perspective so that we can go out into the world with confidence. It is also because actually our economies depend on this. And as we contemplate interregional trade, textiles are one of the most obvious low-hanging fruits. And therefore, it's with great pleasure that I invite our first speaker and keynote speaker to put context to what do we mean by African textiles, because it isn't self-evident. I was a victim of not knowing the difference between African and non-African textiles. And so, Professor Salihu, welcome to the webinar. It's over to you now, and thank you very much for indulging us.
Okay, thank you very much, for actually welcoming me to this great forum. I would like to start by appreciating the organizers of this dialogue, and also to appreciate, the management of Mandela Institute for Development Studies for actually inviting me to participate and as a keynote speaker to this great occasion. Well, what constitutes African textiles? This is a very interesting question. And I would like to say that generally, textiles, I always say, is from cradle to grave. What do I mean by this? Textiles from cradle to grave. Humans encounter textiles from day one when they come to the world, and they continue to encounter textiles which will actually escort them to their graves. That's what I mean by textiles from cradle to grave. Coming to Africa as a continent, Africa is a very interesting continent. They used to call it dark continent, which I said is actually wrong when you talk about what is really happening. African continent is endowed, is well blessed with both human and natural resources. And textiles actually takes the lead, because as human beings, we use clothes, we use clothing, dress from different cultures. Africa, the regions of Africa, the countries, they have different cultures and as well as a lot of similarities. So, I would like to introduce my presentation by saying the history of textiles is an integrated part of the history of civilization. The legendary fig leaf of the Garden of Eden was supplanted by textiles body covering, and textiles assumed a place of importance in the home. Now, next slide. Sorry. I want to share my my screen. How do I go about it?
We will share it for you, Prof.
Okay. Okay.
Your presentation is on the screen.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. So the next slide, please. Now, what is textile? That's the next question. I want to start with this general question. What is textile? Textiles is any type of cloth that is woven, knitted, or felted into a solid piece. Now, that when fibers are available, they are processed in terms of spinning, actually to produce yarns, to weave fabric or knit it. African textiles are textiles that come from various locations across the continent. Now, as we have these regions, we have textiles in all of these regions, and generally, when they are put together, they are regarded as African textiles. Let me have the next slide, please. Now, before we actually have the cloth, we have raw materials. The textile raw materials, we have two major categories of textile fibers. Fibers, are the actual raw materials that are used, to produce textile. We have the two major categories are natural fibers and manufactured fibers. Now, the natural fibers, we have cotton, we have bast fiber, jute, raffia, wool, silk, flax, and bark of some trees. These are general textile materials that we use to produce cloth. Now, we have manufactured fibers. We have nylon, polyester, rayon, and acrylic. But generally, in Africa, natural fibers are used, for fabric or cloth, production. Fibers, we have plant and some other, now, before produced, yarns generally in Africa are produced through hand spinning with the traditional spindle.
Sarah, it looks like we have lost Prof. Can you please check?
No problem. I will just text him or give him a call. We get back. Can we get on with the sharing of the actual video of the origins of textiles, which were supposed to be showcased? Can we get on with that before our next presentation?
Yes, please go ahead. Let's do that. Thank you.
Across the African continent, there are thousands of different textiles and patterns that are indigenous to certain communities. Mudcloth from Mali, the kanga from East Africa, and the stunning geometric patterns of the ndebele in Southern Africa.
Various tribes across the continent take pride in their traditional clothing, which they wear for key festivals and events. There are many various forms of clothes, and the fabric used in the creation of the garment is quite essential. The fabric frequently reflects both the state of society as a whole and the status of individuals or groups within it. Traditional robes passed down through the centuries, oral history, theater, masquerades, and art and artifacts depicting sculptural variations of dress are just a few of the sources. Due to the mild and pleasant climate in most parts of Africa, clothing was not required for warmth or protection, and many tribes wore very little. Women wore wraps around their waists or breasts, and men wore only a loincloth or apron, with scarification and paint ochres adorning the rest of their bodies. For these early forms of clothing, bark fabric, furs, skins, and hides were primarily employed. The bark cloth was simply wrapped around a belt and passed between the legs by men, while women draped it over the belt to hide the front of their body. Raffia was used to stitch strips of bark fabric together and for grass skirts. Bark fabric was created by stripping bark from trees and beating it thin and bendable with the rock from the Stone Age onward. To produce larger portions to cover the body, little pieces were sewed together with skin or raffia. It was sometimes patterned, giving rise to a decorating tradition that can be found in practically every African country. Clothes were adorned with jewelry and headgear made of seashells, bones, ostrich eggshell pieces, and feathers. The oldest evidence of textile manufacturing at Igboukwa was found in the form of fragments of unpatterned bast fiber cloth dating from the 9th century. Bast is a plant fiber made from the phloem of the inner bark. The Telem tunnels in Mali were discovered, showing shards of indigo-dyed cotton and wool fabric from the 11th and 12th centuries. Then, around the 15th century, commercial routes between Europe, Africa, and the East were established, allowing for trade in Africa. Exotic things arrived on the continent, and the locals began to covet them for use in the embellishment of their indigenous cloth. Beads, shells, and buttons began to appear on clothes as ornamentation or as part of the garment itself, such as beaded aprons, capes, headbands, and shoes. Different weaving techniques were evolved in various places, some more advanced than others. Cotton, raffia, silk, and wool were employed as fibers. African attire made of woven and decorated fabrics became a representation of the tribe's position, socio-economic standing, culture, surroundings, and climate. Colors and patterns on printed and colored cloth, woven fabric strips, and beaded clothing differentiate one ethnic group from another. Tribes take pleasure in the quality of their hand-woven cloth, which is manufactured using techniques that have been passed down through generations. These garments can be used as wraps and capes or stitched into masculine and female outfits. Some examples of woven and printed cloth are noted below. Yoruba, in Nigeria, made aso oak and Adiron, indigo resist dyed cloth. Buganda, in Uganda, made bark cloth. Asante, in Ghana, made Kente cloth and Adinkra cloth, printed with stencils or stamps. Bambara, in Mali, made mudcloth. Maasai, in Swahili, made kaitang, printed cloth, and Kikoye, woven cloth. Cuba or Shoa cloth day, woven raffia cloth, African clothing in the modern era. African clothing, which have their origins in traditional attire, are now worn by millions of individuals for both ceremonial and everyday purposes. Wherever you travel in Africa, this creates a lively and colorful atmosphere. African clothing can range from simple to complicated and can consist of a single item or a fully assembled suit. Caftans. Caftans, which are now worn by women in Africa, were initially designed for males. In current times, both men and women wear caftans, which can be as basic as a one-piece robe with a hat or as elaborate as a three-piece ensemble with a hat and scarf. Swahili men wear a kanzu, which is a long, typically white, kaftan with long sleeves. In Central and Western Africa, kaftans are known as babus for men and mbabus for women, and are worn by both sexes. A woman's mbabu is a long gown that overflows over a wrapper and is ornamented with an ornate headscarf. A babu in Nigerian Yoruba is known as an agbada. This is a long, loose-fitting robe with broad sleeves and a hole in the center for the head to slide through that is worn primarily by Yoruba men. It was paired with a long-sleeved tunic, buba.
Thank you. That was very illuminating. Do we have the professor back or online with us? Is the professor, are you able to continue your presentation?
Yes.
All right, you're welcome. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you.
I think we were on slide 6 or so. Can we have that on the screen? Karine, can we share the screen again where we left off, please?
So, okay. Okay, sorry for the technical hitch. Now, I was saying that cloth construction in Africa, generally, it's generally done by horizontal loom for men weavers and vertical looms for women weavers. Let me have the next slide, where I have the image. Next slide, please. Now, this is a typical traditional Hausa weaver in weaver's workshop. This is in Gwarzo, a local government in Kano State, Nigeria. You can see a number of men weavers, each weaver on his loom. Now they have the wapians drawn, far, ahead of them, and as they continue to weave and use the shuttle, to cross the weft yarn to have the plain weave to produce the fabric. This is how they continue. The loom is actually continue to be drawn. The wapians are drawn, and the fabric is actually produced. So let me have the next slide. Now, I have types of African textiles. Now, these have been randomly selected, not all, because just like I said in my introduction, Africa is very vast and it's a very large continent. So I just randomly picked, some of this. I have the first one. I just thought I should start with my host country, South Africa. I picked Ndebele clothing, from South Africa. Then I have Kente Cloth from Ghana, Togo cloth from Cameroon, the Bogolan, from Mali, and Ashoke, Mudukare, Zugu, Sawaye, Akwete, and Okene cloth, all from Nigeria. Let me have the next slide. Now, this is just a typical, image of Ndebele clothing from South Africa. Now we can all say how gorgeously, this has dressed. Look at the body covering, look at the body, decoration, the colors, all this actually make the African textiles what it takes to be. Let me have the next slide. Next slide, please. Now, this is Kente Cloth from Ghana. This cloth is actually regarded as national cloth in Ghana. They cherish it. It's beautiful. I look at the colors. The colors are beautiful. They are brilliant colors, which actually depict, the brightness of Africa as a continent, not as dark continent as it used to be. Regarded as. The colors of this actually fabric, national cloth of Ghana, Kente Cloth. The brilliant colors actually explains the brightness of African continent as a continent. Next slide, please. Now, this is Togo cloth, from Cameroon. The fabric is actually 100% cotton, and look at the color combination, the images, the patterns. Is also their national cloth. This is from northwest region of Cameroon, Bamenda. I understand. So it's a very popular fabric, and they cherish it. In fact, right now I have a doctoral student from Cameroon who is actually working on this Togo cloth. What she's doing, she's actually creating dress accessories. And dress accessories include shoes, ladies' bags, traveling bags, jewelries, headscarf, and so on and so forth. And I understand that apart from the actual original Togo fabric, which is being embroidered with beautiful colors, the local textile industries, in Cameroon is actually simulating the designs on original Togo fabric to print, to have varieties of this kind of fabric. Now, this is the Bogolan of Mali, popularly known as mud cloth. It's called so because of the colors, the materials used to actually print the designs, on this fabric. Look at how the colors. If you relate the previous colors with these colors, the brightness is the unique thing that you always see, in these fabrics of African textiles. Let me have the next slide, please. Now, this is Ashoke from Nigeria. You can see how elegantly looking this couples, look. They dress gorgeously, and it's a very beautiful outfit. So let me have the next slide. Now, purposes of African textiles. They are for clothing. Clothing includes, for male and female. They are also for costumes, ceremonial, rituals. Ceremonials include political gatherings, naming ceremonies. Rituals, includes, religious gathering, funerals, burial ceremonies, and so on and so forth. We also have, furnishing materials that include blankets, bedspreads, and curtains. Now, they come in various form and designs. Now, this is another type of African dress from Mauritania. Mauritanian clothing, which includes male and female. Now, the women clothing is called melafa, while the men clothing is called dara. Now, let me still have the Mauritanian. Now, this is not tradition. The garments are not produced, using actual traditional hand-woven fabrics because of the changing situations and modernity. Now, Africans actually adopt the use of factory manufactured fabrics. These are actually factory manufactured fabrics. But the design, the patterns of the garments, of the clothing, actually look African. For the female women dress, now the one we see for Mauritanians, the Sudanese women also use the same type of dressing. The Chadians, and Sudanese, Mauritanians, Chadians, they use the same type of women dress. In Mauritania, they call it melafa, but Chadians and Sudanese, they call it lafaya. These are, just slight differences, but basically, what we want to, show is that Africans are always the same wherever they are. For the male dress, this is Mauritanian dress. If you look at this Mauritanian dress, the design, the pattern is the same all over Africa. Mauritanians use it. The only difference that the Mauritanians, when they wear this garment, they don't use cap. Whereas in West Africa, in Nigeria in particular, the Yoruba people, when they use their agbada, they use the same kind of material to use for their caps. The Hausa people of northern Nigeria, the same pattern of garment, which is called, Yoruba people call it agbada, the Hausa people call it babariga, but the patterns, are the same. They are the same. So Yoruba people use their cap, the same material of ashoke, to use to construct their garments, and Hausa people use, initially, hand-woven fabrics were used to construct the garment, both for males and female dressing. Now, for female dressing, we have what we call Zugu and Sawaye. This type of fabrics, they are very unique, they are very beautiful, and they are used for wrappers and blouses for women. Then the same type of hand-woven fabric, Mudukare, is used for Hausa people, long, voluminous flowing garment, which is fully embroidered. I have a slide which will actually show that. Now, textile embellishment, garment embellishment, hand and machine embroidery. Now, the male garment, the long flow, elaborate flowing garment, is usually embellished either using hand embroidery or machine embroidery when development actually set in. Now we have home textiles. Home textiles include bedspreads, table coverings, and curtains. Now, the same type of hand-woven materials, were used for bedspreads, table coverings, and curtains. With changing situation, when we have factory manufactured fabrics, then gradually things are changing. But we still have people who are very much interested, and they are still using this kind of fabric, for bedspreads, table coverings, and curtains. Then applique. Applique is another kind of technique of fabric embellishment where designs are created and pasted or as patchworks. Next slide. Okay, next. Okay, now this slide actually is showing the real Hausa men's garment. Look at how heavily embroidered the garment is. It's very prestigious, and it's made with hand-woven fabric, and is dyed actually with indigo. Next slide, please. Now this is a floor mat. It was braided with recycled cloth. This is to show that Africans are very creative and they are very resourceful. Nothing is wasted. When we have old cloth, it's reused, recycled to produce, to put it to another use, to produce floor mat. Next slide, please. This is another floor mat, which actually illustrates the applique, I was talking about in the earlier slide. We have in the center of it, we have the woven fabric. Then we have largely at the background, we have the dyed, cloth, which is manufactured fabric. Then we have synthetic leather, pasted, to actually decorate and use it as a floor mat. Next slide, please. Now, in my conclusion, I just want to say that the uniqueness of African textiles in terms of elegance, cultural, socio-economic, and political significance is what makes African textile really African. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm sure that during the discussion, a lot of our participants will want to engage you. So I hope that you can stay with us for the duration and contribute to what will be, no doubt, enriching discussions. So thank you very much for
all welcome.
that. Thank you very much.
Welcome. You're welcome.
And so, as I said earlier, one of the participants is not able to join us. And so that has given us a little bit of leeway. But at the moment, I'm pleased to now introduce Chief Nike Davis Okudaye from Nigeria, who is going to give us a presentation on Nigerian batik, a textile designer and appointed member of the United Nations Education, Scientific, Cultural Organization Committee of the Nigeria Intangible Cultural Heritage Project. Chief Nike, it's your turn now. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, my sister. I will say good morning to the house. I'm going to start from my parents. The way they pass education to kids in those days is still on now, but it's getting. So I learned from my great-grandmother, who is a weaver. I actually practice it. I'm a weaver. And I went to US to teach women's loom. And my father do embroidery on agbada. And I want to thank Professor for even showing the agbada that is hand embroidery. Professor has shown most of everything on textile. And I'm very, very proud of him because he's not showing only one country. He's showing the whole Africa. And I always want people to know that 54 countries, we are one because we have the same feeling for our textile. The closest thing to your skin is your textile. And Yoruba say, "Ènìyàn lásán mi," people are my fabric. And who are those people? When a child is born, the next thing is to put clothes on the child. The closest thing is the textile, and that is why the art of textile is very, very powerful. And you people who are into textile, especially designer, I want to thank you. We are the producer for putting it on the runway, for people to see the beauty of our textile and the unique that our textile, people call us people of color, but we are not just people of color. Our textile put us in a bright mood and make us happy. Every time when you see Nigeria is doing ceremony, people will wear the same fabric to celebrate. Those people who are celebrating, let's say they are doing marriage, they are doing burial, funeral, christening. So people wear the same fabric and celebrate with them. Most of what you are going to see on my own video is how we use organic. We don't want to impregnate the earth by putting the chemical inside the earth. So we like to use the organic dye. And the food that we eat is also part of the thing we put onto our fabric. And you are going to just see the old film. This film is almost 15 years ago. I'm looking for young people and your organization to come and do a new film so the younger people will be able to take some lesson because what you put together today, I want to thank the organizer for making this possible for the whole Africa country to see the beauty of their own continent by using the textile to showcase the talk of today. So I'm going to say they should just put the little video on so people can see how we get our natural color from the elu tree. And some of these...
In 1995, there are very few places left where adire is still made. One of these is the Nike Center for Arts and Culture in Osogbo, which was founded in 1986. Here, Nike Davis, one of the leading figures in the Nigerian art world, provides studio and exhibition space, free tuition, accommodation, and often even food, as well as art materials for about 80 students. She has succeeded in creating a livelihood for many of them by introducing new techniques such as batik, dyed with chemical colors. Additionally, there are other artists who are attached to the Nike Center, producing and teaching oil painting, printmaking, bead pictures, wool applique, and welded or wooden sculptures. Apart from these new forms, often referred to as Osogbo art, Nike is trying to preserve the line and area exclusion method of adire, a process with many and various techniques. Traditionally, every step of the process was reserved to specially trained women only. But since the traditional division of labor between men and women in Yoruba society no longer holds, these rules are no longer strictly enforced. This film does not pretend to represent a traditional situation, but rather to give an idea of the many skills that adire production requires and how it is carried out today. Everything begins with the collection of the young leaves of the elu plant. Here, Silifat and one of her students is collecting a bundle of them. Silifat is her personal name, but she is usually called Iyalaro, a title given to a senior woman who is a master dyer with her own compound and business. Silifat comes from a family which has been engaged in adire and indigo dyeing for generations. She met Nike Davis in 1990 at the textile market in Ibadan, where she was buying cloth with her sister, whom Nike knew. Nike invited Iyalaro to visit Osogbo, recognizing that she was one of the few experts in adire still practicing the craft. Since then, Iyalaro has been involved with students at the Nike Center, passing on this valuable knowledge to the next generation. Once collected, the leaves have to be pounded in a wooden mortar with a large pestle. When they have been pulverized, a green-blue mass is left in the mortar. Iyalaro scoops the residue out with her hands and molds it into balls, which she puts in the sun to dry for a few days. Is, after all, the slow oxidation of the elu plant that produces indigo blue. While they are drying, she prepares the alkaline solution in which they will later be dissolved. Shells from the fruit of the cocoa tree are collected, dried, and then slowly burned into ash. Petroleum or other modern chemicals cannot be used to accelerate the process, since that would contaminate the dye.
Most of the things you are seeing now, even though the film is no more talking, but what we are trying to show there is the old way of making the dye in Nigeria. And I want to let you know the whole Nigeria do adire, both Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa. Like you have seen, there is a dyeing pit in Kano 400 years ago. The dyeing pit is still there. And I would love if our younger people can go for excursion to see those dyers. So they can still, even though they can use chemical dye, but the traditional dye, they can be exporting it in future.
Hello, Sarah. Have we lost the chief?
Okay.
Are you back, Chief?
Yes, I'm back now. I was talking,
Okay.
but I don't know. People don't even hear me. I said textile has been a way of making money for the local women in those days. So people can do this textile behind their yard. You don't need a big shop. You don't need a big office. You just put your table behind your house and the leftover from your food, which is called lafun, which is cassava, our popular food, is what you use to do this textile. And then when you dye it, it's organic. You take something from the earth and put it back into the earth without any chemical. Go to Cross River. They use needle to stitch their own adire. With any textile done in Nigeria, like aso ofi, is woven, but on the loom. We have adire alabere, which is hand stitched, adire leko, hand painted with chicken's feather, adire alabela, that is the one with the beeswax, which I actually discovered my own by accident when there is no electricity in the village. And I was using the candlelight to see what I'm doing. A little bit of the candle drop on the fabric. When I finish with the one with the paste, the candle come through to the back and it's brighter. That is how I started using beeswax. The other one is the name that is given to the fabric. People want to buy something new. And the only way the sellers has to give them a new name for people to be able to buy it. For example, they only tell you the positive side of the textile. Oh, I'm in a happy mood. Then you want to buy happy mood. I'm looking for a lover. So people want to buy that one. Money and baby, follow me. People want to buy it. But there is also the other side of the fabric, which is a junction where people meet. And that one, we always say, the secret of the fabric will never be known to anybody. So I want more and more people to be able to use their own heritage, their own direct background to keep this textile going. And always, I'm happy to see you people, the way you really put all of us together, because nobody can do it if you people don't do it. You are the only one who know us better, and nobody can tell our story except ourselves. And I'm very, very proud of you people. I thank you. And if there is any question later on, they can be asking me, because I don't want to overthrow, I don't want to over for my 10 minutes. Thank you very much. I thank the organizer. I thank Professor. Professor, you are excellent. And our organizer, I want to say, you make my day, because textile is my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you very much, Chief Nikkei.
And thank you, Professor Chief. That was wonderful. And in an era in which the environment is everything, in an era in which things synthetic, we know, destroy the environment through emissions, you reminding us of the importance of using organic substances, I think it's very pertinent. And I think that is a subject that is worthy of pursuing. Africa's contribution to knowledge of otherwise environmentally friendly substances used in all manner of the textile industry, which have for the last century nearly been buried under. And now Africa is being told that the world is now, and its air is dirty, and that Africa must contribute to cleaning up, the air. Wherein really what people ought to be asking is, how can we go back and make sure we do not continue this use of synthetic substances, which in the end are only toxic to the very environment you live. So good for you, Chief, and thank you very much for indulging us. And so with those few words, I would now like to move on to the next speaker with a reminder that we have a 10 minutes limit. The next speaker is Priya Shah. Priya Shah is an artist and founder of Mia Cora, best known for her acclaimed fabric map of Africa. She's going to talk to us about the different types of textiles indigenous to the continent. Welcome to the webinar, Priya. Please take it from here.
Mrs. Sheila, sorry to chime in. Priya is unable to connect.
Oh, no.
So I believe as we wait for her, we may move on to Laduma, as she may be able to make it after that.
Okay, that's lovely. Okay, then. So I apologize. I'm going to backtrack and say we wait and see if technology enables us. In the interim, it is my pleasure to introduce Leduma. Leduma is founder of Matkosa Africa, which is a business I read about, as a matter of fact, in international fashion magazines, been something of a follower of fashion, though it doesn't show. But I did think your designs were very inspirational and very original. So I look forward to listening to you, and I hope the audience does too, as you take us through the influence of indigenous textiles on your own personal design as a young person born and raised in South Africa. Over to you, please. Are you going to start with a PowerPoint, a video, or are you just going to start with sharing your insights? Leduma?
I'm simply going to share my insights on how I basically founded the brand 10 years ago. And I have examples in the background behind me of the outcome that has come out of what we have created. My name is Latuma Ngqokolo. I'm born and raised on the south coast of South Africa in a city called Port Elizabeth. As you might know, Port Elizabeth is the main city of a province called the Eastern Cape, and the Eastern Cape prides itself with a culture that is called the Xhosa people. The Xhosa people are the second biggest population in South Africa after the Zulu people. And what we are very known for as Xhosa people is super extravagant dress code and super colorful dress code. Our greatest ambassador of our culture is the late Nelson Mandela. And we have some of the most beautiful and magnificent beadwork in the continent. I'd like to think that we have the best, but that's an argument for another day. Even better than the Ndebele. But about 10 years ago, I did a thesis project at the Nelson Mandela University, where I came up with an idea of modernizing our traditional beadwork. Since we, as the young people, don't really relate much to our cultural dress code, and I specifically desired to wear my own culture on a daily basis. So the thesis project that I initiated at the Nelson Mandela University was based on modernizing culture for a specific group that we call Amakwala. Amakwala in English translates to Xhosa initiates. It's basically a group of young men that are aged between 18 to about 25 years old. Culturally, every Xhosa boy, well, dependent on what their choice is nowadays, has to go through manhood circumcision. And that is all done in the forest and where women are not allowed. We basically stay for a month and we get circumcised with no Western medical procedures. That ritual is done as a form of transition from boyhood to manhood. And before a boy joins that ritual, they have to give away all their belongings, and their parents have to buy them an entirely new wardrobe as a sign of a new beginning and as a send-off for you to go and be a man and start a new family and start a new life. But your parents have to purchase you a good pack of clothing that will last you hopefully forever. And in our case, our parents buy us premium brands. Like your Pringles of Scotland, Leyland Scots, and most of the brands that are within South Africa were predominantly Western brands. So I wanted to substitute that availability of brands that were in the market, but at the same time, I wanted to offer a luxury option alternative for people that appreciate and love luxury so that they can purchase that as a choice. So the objective ultimately, when I started the thesis project, was to ultimately come up with an idea that will sit next to your brands like Gucci and Louis Vuitton and Hermes, brands that are done with good intentions of being sustainable and clothing that can last for decades. Fortunately, in Port Elizabeth, we have the biggest mohair industry in the world. But the irony is that about 80% of all of that raw material gets exported to Europe and China and America, where it gets converted into products that later come to South Africa in Louis Vuitton and Gucci boutiques that get sold in the highest price margins you can ever imagine, because those are premium materials that they get from the continent, that we have tons of them, but we underutilize them. So I started making products from wool and mohair because they were easily accessible to us. But of course, I had to think about a very distinctive design angle to come up with when I started the brand. So I looked at our traditional beadwork. I went to museums around the Eastern Cape, and with further research that I did, I later realized that there are about 200 clans that the Xhosa people are subdivided in, and every clan had their own design preferences and style and colors, and I instantly thought that there would be a lot of leverage in terms of design that can go on for centuries. So I took those beadwork patterns, motifs, colors, and modified them in my own interpretation so that I can create something that stands out, but not just that, create a brand that is relatable to the youth and also to other cultures within the continent and the rest of the world. And that is how a brand that we created 10 years ago called Maxhosa was created. Of course, with the infrastructure that limits us in South Africa, because a lot of factories that were around closed down. 5 years after I started the business, I bought one of the factories that I used to source from and started manufacturing our products in-house. And we later opened up a boutique at a mall in Cape Town called the V&A Waterfront. We opened up a boutique last year right next to Louis Vuitton and Gucci. And about 5 years ago, we opened up a boutique here in Johannesburg in what is so-called the biggest shopping mall in Africa. It's called the Mall of Africa. We have a boutique that is about 180 square meters, and we currently employ about 110 people within the company and proudly manufacture every piece in a artisan manner to make sure that whoever buys our products gets value and keep it for a long time and even pass it down to the next generation. And some of our customers that we've had over the years have kept their pieces that they bought in 2011 and 12 and 13. And we continue, yes, we are a traditional brand that is based on a culture, but about 3 years ago, even though the brand was called Maxhosa by Laduma, because it was an interpretation of what I do personally, we felt like we need to represent the continent in a global scale. We substituted the Bailaduma and replaced it with Maxhosa Africa. And we've been going strong over the years, and hopefully we will go as further as investing in livestock and buy sheep and goats and own the value chain, because as you know, the fashion industry and the textile industry is a vast industry where one can leverage on the value chain. And that is the best way to sustain a vision of building an empire that will outlive me and the generation that is currently celebrating what we have started. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope that the other young people on the forum today take inspiration from you. And when I look at the first thing that struck me when I first saw your designs was, in a way, how representative they were of Africa's love for color and Africa's capacity for self-expression when it comes to things of color. As I look at the garments behind you, I see that they fit very well in the world's, international airports where these brands lie. And so, as a frequent traveler, I hope one day when I'm traveling around the world, I shall find your brand at one of the international airports. And so we wish you well, and certainly I'm following you with a lot of interest, and I look forward to the conversation that we will have today with some young people. And the notion of sustainability, I think, is very key. The notion of being master of your own business environment by operating right through the value chain, including the procurement of raw materials, and then marrying the idea with Chief Nike of finding indigenous colors. My sense is that combining that to make it offer the world a sustainable development story could very well be, the springboard that takes you to the next level. But I don't want to teach grandma to suck eggs. You've succeeded and you don't need me. So let me check with Sarah whether or not we have Priya on the line. Has Priya been able to join us, Sarah?
Unfortunately not. I believe we can move ahead to the Q&A session. It is really sad, as she has also assisted us in the whole compilation of this, but I guess Kenya and the wilds are not for her today. So I believe we can go ahead with the Q&A, but I see that many participants have posed their questions on the chat rather than on the Q&A box. But I believe, Mrs. Sheila, you can first start with the hands that are raised, and then we will find a way to get all the questions in the chat box onto the question and answer box. So you can just recognize the ones with their hands up and they can speak up.
Sure, but the hand feature is not showing on mine. So for some reason it was showing earlier, but it's not showing now. So if you see it, by all means, just call on the first person and give them the mic. It doesn't show on mine, unfortunately. Please go ahead.
No problem. So the first person with their hand up is Victor Momo, and I will just unmute you and give you access to talk. Can you talk, Mr. Victor? Ms. Karine, can you just assist with giving Mr. Momo permission to talk?
He has the mic, he just needs to unmute himself.
Can you hear us, Victor? Please click on your mic and release the mute button, and then we will be able to hear you.
Okay, good morning.
There you are. Good morning, Victor. Tell us where you're talking to us from.
Yes, Victor Momo, CEO of Nigeria Multi Investment from Sierra Leone.
Lovely to have you. Yes,
I want to thank Mandela Institute for Development Studies and also an alumni. Happy for this series, and also want to thank the professor and all the other presenters. Now, I have 3 questions which I really want to know. The first question is, we've talking about textile. Do we have in Africa, or especially in West Africa, costumes that tell us our connectivity as a people through the culture of our costume? For example, now, is there in a way Nigeria is related to Sierra Leone through costumes, or South Africa to to Zimbabwe or other countries? That's just one question I need to know, because of sometimes costumes speaks about our culture, and it's possible that we might have a cultural ties based on the type of dressing or costume we put on. That's number one question. And the number
Victor,
yeah,
bear with me, please. Because we have many people, I'm going to let you ask the one question. Hold on to the other two. And then I'll note that you have, and if there's room, just so we give everybody. So I think that question probably belongs to the professor and the chief. The question is, what do we know about costumes and how they link us culturally, for instance, in West Africa? Prof, would you like to answer that question?
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, the moderator. I think what I can say about the linkage, costumes and other friendly African countries, is that when you look at if you pick a costume from West Africa, from South Africa, from East Africa, they are usually very colorful. Colors actually link up communities. Colors. Individuals have colors, color tests. Countries have national colors, patterns of the costumes, and the fabrics they use. Actually, these are the major linkages that actually connect, Africans. The patterns, the symbols, used, to decorate these costumes. Actually, they are the fundamental linkages, that connect, Africans together. I don't know whether I have answered Mr. Victor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief, would you like to chime in, please?
Yes.
Are we connected through costume?
Yes, of course we are. When you go to Freetown, that is Sierra Leone, you see them wearing the bubus, which we call agbadas. So they wear the tie and dye. Actually, when you see Sierra Leone people, their tie dye is like Abeokuta, which is Abeokuta in western part of Nigeria. But also the way they dress, the hat and everything. We always say the people from Sierra Leone are from West Africa because they are uniform. The way even the food, we are connected. We are connected. Look at when you go to Senegal, you see the agbadas. The same agbada they wear in Nigeria. The same agbada they wear in Sierra Leone. So that costume is the one that brings us to, we call it ethnic. So that brings us together because in Nigeria, we have 3 ethnic groups, but we have more than 450 languages. But when you go to Freetown, you can see some people speaking Yoruba, some people speaking Hausa. So the costume itself is the same thing with West Africa. So I think the costume actually brings us to be one Africa. Like when I go to South Africa, people in Nigeria always call me South Africa. But I like to dress like South Africa when I go to South Africa. When I go to Kenya, I like to dress like Kenya because we are one. And that costume makes us different to other countries. So I think costume connect us more.
That's lovely. I mean, I'm not a specialist like you, but my reading also tells me that the type of materials we use, yes. Because I think it was you who said when a baby is born, the first contact they have with the world is the fabric in which they are wrapped.
Yes.
And also the fabric in which they are wrapped is often a function of the climate. Laduma spoke about mohair. They are near Lesotho. They breed these in farms, these mohair goats in sheep. And so my assumption is that if you go to Lesotho, you better wrap a baby in a very warm blanket because that is cold. And also the adornments. In Southern Africa, we use traditionally ostrich eggshells on essentially what is suede cloth that we wear traditionally as, if you wish, people who follow from the sand culture. You in West Africa use the cowrie shell because you are ocean people. So I think part of the connection is just not in the construct of the garment, but it is also in the materials we use based on climate and need, but also in the objects that we use. Later on, white people brought bead cloths and glass beads rather. And now we have the Ndebele beads, about which we were told, and then we have the Xhosa beads, and then we have the Swahili beads, etc., etc. So I think it is a pertinent question. I want to thank Victor for asking. Do we have another hand up, Sarah? Do you want to call on somebody and give them the mic, please?
Yes, ma'am. So our next person to pose a question is Mr. Peter Bando. And you can just unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Peter Bando from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. My question is, how does the African textile contribute to the economy of the African people? Particularly nowadays, there is technology. How can this bamboo textile in Africa can it transform the people's lives and well-being in Africa? Or we have all those designs, but to put the environment friendly, we can also adapt the bamboo textile to be among in the production line. For instance, I visited Gambia 2018 on the African Ordinary Session of the African Commission of Human Rights. I learned that most of people in Gambia, they do not consume bamboo in textile. And as well in Tanzania, I can see it happens. So how does even the African people, they are prepared to consume their own and produce on their own to contribute to the economy? That's what my question is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laduma, you are the commercial voice of today's conversation. Do you want to take a step at that? How can we make sure that textiles contribute meaningfully to the lives of the African people, both as merchants, but also as consumers of their own products?
I think for me, it starts with great design. Like we need some of the greatest design skillsmen in the world here, right in the continent. I mean, I had to go through 6-7 years of university before I got to the stage of where I am. And I had 10 years of experience before I was able to put a product in a retail space that is easily sellable. And it takes time to get there. And it needs a lot of patience as well. And building a luxury brand takes time. Like, if you allow me to share, I'd like to share a few images of our clients. And also, one thing that I have to highlight is client service. It comes with a lot of responsibility. It sort of feels like building a rocket science in order to have a happy and fulfilled client. So these are some of the examples of customers that we serve, that we have to make sure that at all costs, there are happy clients, because without a happy customer, one cannot actually support their system in the background. Of course, infrastructure is part of the solution. Yes, here in South Africa, we've got a lot of raw material, but I had to be able to invest in infrastructure to be able to make sure that I create a product that competes with other products globally. Of course, quality plays a big part because that can either make you or break you if your quality doesn't talk to what the customers need. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. I want you to stay with me because I have a question here, which I think on the chat box, which I think is very important. It's from Smangaliso Ariel Mbili. And he's asking you directly the question, do you believe that there is a need for a continental strategy to protect and preserve our African textile industry? This is in awareness of bodies like the Federation for Haute Couture and Fashion in France. He's written his question in French, but I can figure out what he's saying. Do we need versions of these for our fashion and textile industries? What do you think can be done? And also our roles as emerging leaders. There you are, Laduma from Smangaliso. Thank you for the question, Smangaliso. It's very important.
Sorry, I lost you there, Sheila.
You're on mute.
Did you hear me or shall I repeat the whole question?
Yes, please, if you may.
Okay, basically what Smangaliso is saying, what do you believe? Is there a need for a continental strategy to protect and preserve Africa's textile industry in the way that you have other federations for haute couture and fashion in France and other parts of Europe? And if so, what can be done to achieve this?
Absolutely, we do need that support system. As innovators in the continent, we do need a strong arm that will stand for us. For instance, here in South Africa, of course, South Africa is a democratic and a free trade country. But what we get challenged the most as designers and brand owners is the knockoff imports of our products that get imported into our country. And once one raises that issue to either through legal remedy or through the government, it takes a long bureaucratic process to get that to be rectified. So if there would be a federation or a representation that can stand for us to actually fast track those issues, it will help us a lot. And also the cost factor of protecting your IP in a global scale is super steep. Like if I go to China or America and file my design for protection, I would have to spend millions of dollars. But if the government would incentivize creatives within the continent to make sure that when they explore their businesses in other territories, it will be less cost effective and more convenient for them, because right now we no longer only operate in a physical space in terms of distribution of our products. Because we live in a digital age, it's easy to get my products into other parts of the world, but to protect it from being infringed, it is super difficult. The French have fortunately done that well, and we need to learn from their way of doing it by means of branding. So with haute couture, for instance, you're almost not verified if you are not based in France and you say you create haute couture. But in a case where you are based in Africa, there has to be a strong brand that verifies what we do that no one else can find elsewhere in the world. Like champagne, for instance. Yes, we create beautiful sparkling wine down in Cape Town, but champagne bottle, people who produce that sparkling wine cannot call it champagne, so we might have to look at branding our craft in that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's funny you should use the trademark champagne, which the French protect, as an example, because I was going to use to suggest to the person who raised the question that actually on the continent, one of the best examples of a successful export product that emanates from South Africa is South African wine. And it's not that it is a good wine, it is that they have fought battles and succeeded in being able to get South African wines into the European market and into the US market and into Australia. And these are very big producers of wine with very big brands. So perhaps a better question might be, or an alternative question might be, how can we learn from other African industries that have succeeded in the world where there is competition, and use that to springboard the textile industry? South African Breweries was the first beer to get into China 30 years ago or so. So they are very successful stories, and so forth and so forth. Dangote's cement is a global brand now and has made inroads into pretty much all of Africa. So if you are looking for examples of African products going out, perhaps a better way is not to see what the European does, but what the other Africans did. But I do have a question also for the chief. Ronald says to the chief, sure, you got these African shrubs, and sure, they are organic, you're producing dye from them, but it looks laborious. In today's modern industrial environment, how do we make sure we leverage those expertise, but that the environment and the production processes are competitive? That's a question to the chief from Ronald. Chief, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I'm here. Yes, we just need some of our local council people to make sure people go back to the farm, because there is so much we have in Africa that we are taking for granted. I remember when my great-grandmother is alive, we went to Jos. They were exporting indigo to Germany, to different countries. The same thing they were doing with palm oil. So, but now, many people, they don't want to go to farm anymore. They just name our traditional textile, our traditional local material. I see some of my own country people here, they are exporting the raffia we sent to US. They want the raffia from US, but this raffia is coming from the eastern Nigeria and Abeokuta. They export it to US, and they are now bringing it back with a lot of money. So we just need to educate our people that what we have is indigenous. What we have is authentic. Let's try to make use of it. And then we spread the news by writing a book and let people, our children, start to know from the age of 6 what we have that we don't normally value. There is so much we have in Africa here. And I cannot stop thanking you for making it possible for all the youth to hear, because these are the future of tomorrow. These are the future of Africa, the youth. Once they start adopting it, like the textile, ordinary house help will be able to wear our textile. And those are the people who will spread the news and say, oh, I can make this color from the back of my
We can't hear you, Chief. Okay, I think we've lost Chief. I hope that you can hear me.
Yeah,
okay, Chief is back.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you now, Chief.
All right, ma.
Oh, Olga, we are struggling. So I'm gonna excuse you, maybe when your mic is working better, we can give you a chance to finish.
Yes.
We
we
lost you.
Okay. Can you
Yeah,
hear
we
me?
lost you.
Okay.
Intermittently. It's a bit difficult.
They lose. Yeah, they cannot get.
Yes. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that.
No
If you are able to type your response on the chat, that might help. And
All
then
right.
we get the benefit of your wisdom.
Yes, I will ask him to put it. They want me to type it on the chat later. We can always send it to you later.
All right, no problem.
All right.
Thank you very much. Sarah, do we have any hands up?
Yes, we have a hand from Mukhtar Dodo. And Mukhtar, you can just unmute yourself and talk.
Go ahead, Mukhtar. I'm sorry, Mukhtar, you got background noise. We can't hear you at all.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see how it comes across. Go ahead.
I'm in my private room. There's no noise.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Mukhtar. Mukhtar, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to mute and maybe try again. We can't hear you at all. My sincere apologies. I apologize for that. While Mukhtar sorts out his mic, Sarah, do you have somebody else?
Sorry, I was muted. So I believe we can go back to Mr. Victor.
So you don't have anyone else?
No.
Okay, that's lovely. Victor, you had two questions and we took one. I think you can ask both of them now because there doesn't seem to be a queue. Are you still there, Victor?
Mrs. Sheila, there's also a question within the Q&A box. So
Hello?
I believe.
Yes, yeah, I have a question. Victor, can you go with your question, one question, and then I'll go back to Frank Daniels, who has a question. Francis Daniels, rather.
Yes, my second question is that for Sierra Leone, we have the bamboo and also the raffia palm that grows widely across the country. Now, I'm asking if there's any indigenous technology, right, known that has been tested that we can use to transform the raffia or the bamboo into a textile, because for me, it becomes more African than, and be part of culture because the raw material is grown in Africa. So that's just my question, if there's any technology, because I'm really interested in that technology and see how I can partner with institutions and individuals to move this process forward.
That's lovely. Thank you. Prof, do you know of any such technology that can be used to process the palm and raffia using indigenous? I think the underlying word there is indigenous, to give Africa not only an edge, but also to showcase our own technological capabilities. Prof, are you still on the line?
Yes, please. Thank you very much for coming back to me. Now, I think what I will advise Mr. Victor to do is actually to spearhead. I don't know what he does, but he can liaise with the institutions, in his country, so that academics, should conduct researches, to look into this so that they can get, a way of actually tapping from these natural resources so that they can use it better. That's my thinking anyway.
That's wonderful. So I have a question here from Francis Daniels. It reads, how can African textiles production costs be reduced via manufacturing so that they enter both African and foreign market at scale, and as such, and I'm paraphrasing here, competitively? Laduma, do you have a view on how we can scale up? How are you doing it yourself? How are you getting yourself in a position that you have scale and therefore can capitalize on both the African and foreign markets?
Thanks, Sheila. I think the subject of scale, of course, is dependent on the infrastructures that we have set in place. In my case, of course, with the demand that is growing for my product, I have to consult with other factories to assist me to supply the demand. And of course, securing raw material well in advance so that we don't get to a time where we are not able to supply the demand. Because if we don't, someone else will. At the end of the day, we operate in a very competitive market. I'd like to maybe shed light a little bit on the bamboo question that the gentleman asked previously. I've used bamboo a lot of times for my products, but mainly on socks. Bamboo is an amazing fiber for socks because it absorbs sweat, but with garments it makes them a bit heavy, you know, when it has absorbed your sweat. But of course, with innovation techniques on bamboo, one can actually establish a very competitive product if they innovate with it and invest in the technology of converting and offering good fibers with bamboo.
Thank you very much for that. Victor, do you want to share your third question, please? You are muted, Victor. Unmute yourself, please, and let's hear your third question. Sarah, are you able to reach Victor? He may be unaware that he's muted, but I can see that he's muted.
I can see that as well. So I will just send him an inbox now and inform him that he can speak. But on the while, I believe we can move back to the Q&A box as I see there's another question.
Sure. So there's a question here from Promise Banatu. Promise's question is, for someone who wants to go into textile production as a business, what are the basics knowledge? What he said, what is the basic knowledge that I should acquire? I mean, what will be your advice to such a person? Madam Chief and then Laduma. Chief, are you able to give advice?
If somebody want to go into production, the way we do our own in Nigeria, anything you want to do, you must learn from a professional. Then you will not be able to make mistake, because sometimes people just say, oh, I saw it on internet. It's true, you can also learn on internet. But without learning and get somebody to really mentor you, they can stop on the roadside and say, oh, it's not bringing money. So you need to go with some people who are already in the business. So they will be able to mentor you and you can be studying with them even online. It's easy now. People can go online and learn. And for us who does not have online, I have some teachers who can teach. My daughter can teach online. And that is how we are mentoring a lot of people online. So you have to learn with the professional.
Very much. I'm gonna take a question from Benji. Benji had asked a question in French. I've tried to translate it. I think it says, what is the importance of textiles to Africa's development? Prof? You want to take that? Prof, are you still with us? I think we've lost Prof. In any case, Sarah, you don't have any questions because we are pretty much near the end of the run. You have any questions?
Well, from a young person, I was totally touched from all the advice given from Chief Nike and all the knowledge from Prof. Salihu, but the most that touched me was from Laduma. And I had just read that he was actually so recognized worldwide.
That's
that he was chosen to represent the famous movie Coming to
That's
America.
lovely. Yes, we are very proud of Laduma. And we, as I said, we hope others follow. Francis Daniel says, okay, go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah.
I actually think it's okay. I would want to give Mr. Victor and TD a chance as.
Okay, so we have a question here from Francis.
So I hear Victor.
I will do.
Okay.
Sorry. Can I take back the mic for a while, Sarah?
There is a delay.
Hello?
Yeah, there seems to be a delay. So anyway, Francis asked the question, which I think is very important. I'll come to you, Victor. And it says, how can, he says, are North African textiles not part of African textiles? There has been very little mention of North African textiles. Of course, the professor did speak about Mauritania, but I think it is fair to say they are. Actually, North African textiles are very important. Rugs, particularly, but also for the longest time before the advent of GATT, which is part of the WTO dispensation, Egypt was one of the world's largest producers of cotton until GATT came up with something which was called the multi-fiber dispensation, which basically prevented Africans like Egypt from producing and being competitive. So certainly North Africa is part, at least in my view, of the African textile story. But I'm going to defer to the professor to tell us, is North Africa part of the African story or not? And why is there so little mention of it today? Prof, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. You see, this is a very interesting question. North Africa is very much, part of Africa, African continent in general. Mauritania, apart from the dresses, I have shown in my presentation, North Africa, they have, you also mentioned rugs. They have this kind of history of rugs production. If you look at the camels, when during their ceremony, the decorations, they have, it's just like the decorations we have in North Africa, especially in Nigeria, where the royals decorate their horses during celebrations. So even camels, they are decorated. And if you, I'm sorry, let me digress a little. If you take the camels decorations in Niger, for instance, it's just similar to that of Mauritania and other North African countries. Camels, during any celebrations, they are usually decorated, and horses are decorated in Nigeria, northern Nigeria specifically. A lot of money is being spent, on horse decoration. So also North Africans also, they spend money, to decorate, their animals, the camels, and the rocks they produce. So North African textiles is very much part of African textile history. Thank you very much.
That's lovely. TV, please, let's hear from you.
Thank you. So not from me, just wanted to help Sarah with the Q&As because I think her internet's a bit unstable. In the chat box, I think Antoinette Shawa had a question for Laduma asking how his company has been affected by the pandemic. And if it has been affected, what strategies did the company put in place to continue operations?
There you are, Laduma. How did you weather the corona storm?
Hi, TD. Actually, the pandemic didn't affect us much because we had to be creative. We were forced to be creative and come up with ideas to confront those challenges. So first of all, when it hit us in March last year, we of course had to lay off our workers for a good month. And we had a gathering with them and had a session with them and asked them what would be the best way to go about things. We ultimately all decided that we will pay them in full and they would work extra days on weekends to cover the cost, the compensation that they were covered with. And of course, there was the demand, the huge wave of demand for masks. I was hesitant to go into that market, but I ultimately did, not knowing that it would contribute a huge revenue into our 2020 and current year revenue. Instead of actually losing business, we gained more business and we doubled our staff complement. We ultimately had to keep the momentum going and be creative through the pandemic. Yes, of course, some businesses suffered, but I think it was a testing time where people were actually questioning the unique selling points of certain products and deciding whether they really desire certain products or not. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's, I guess, a good lesson in, what they're saying. Please don't waste a problem, turn it into an opportunity. And so that's what you did. So good for you. Victor, are you ready to ask your last question, which will also be the last question of the session? We've got about 3 minutes left, and I don't need 5 minutes to wrap up. So, Victor, if you can be very quick, please.
Yes, hello.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, mine is simple, really. I have a company, right? And I want to go fully into textile, right? But then the question I ask is that, is there any institution in Africa that you're aware of that really in the textile industry? If there is any, if they can share their contact with me, that'll be fine. And lastly, do you know any the level of finance, right, in the textile industry in Africa? Do you have any data on that one? Because it really prepare me, right, how to go into the industry. That's just my question, please.
Thank you very much. So can I suggest that we note that if we have any information, but more to the point, one of the sessions, well, let me do my closing remarks, and in there is a little answer that might be helpful to you, Victor. So let me thank the panelists. Let me thank the Minds team. Let me thank May for gracing us with her presence, and let me thank the audience for joining us. Here's the way I see things. things don't have to be perfect to be worthy. Things don't have to be perfect to be worth doing. And so today, despite the glitches, is an example that we mustn't make perfection the enemy of good. So we've done well. What we did today, which was to start the process of a conversation on African textiles, starting with essentially an attempt to define it, I think it's a very important and worthy step, and we should all be proud of being party to it. I would be flawed if I didn't tell you that this is only the beginning. Minds has a lineup of events on this subject matter in the future. And for those who are interested, we ask you to stay tuned, not just through social media, but by visiting the videos and presentations that will now be fully uploaded onto the Minds website. And then, of course, to indulge yourself and follow through with your colleagues, but also the presenters who presented today. So in the short run, what we're going to do is, after this introductory session, we're going to look at production methods. Some people spoke about the laborious nature of production method. In this session, you'll be able to delve into details about both the traditional and modern methods. And then to Professor's point, for the young talented, take these methods and modernize them for yourself. They exist not because they're an end in themselves, they're a mere beginning, and they have evolved over time. Now it's your generation's turn to evolve them so they are relevant in the modern day technological and sustainability environment. So there you are. The next session after the production method will be one that looks at trade and industry dialogue. And that is where you come in, Victor, because then we will have people who will be speaking to the subject of your interest. What do we know about the status of textiles and its potential in the trade and commerce space? So I would say that you stay tuned. And so with those few words, I once again want to thank Minds for the opportunity to moderate. I've learned a great lot myself, and hope that everybody too has learned as much as I have. And so thank you very much for joining us. And with those few words from here in Gaborone, and it's not Gaborone, it's Gaborone, goodbye, and thank you very much for joining us. And again, well done to the team.